Of course, everybody has seen you and your old mate, Mr. FROCH. You've started your tour now. So tell us a little bit about that. How have you been getting on?
Yeah, great. Me and Carl are quite the double act. We've had, I think it's three events so far. We've got about another half a dozen or so to go. There might end up with being a few more. We're just warming in. It's like each round. It's like another round, you know. Obviously, our first fight was a big first round, but this one's it's a slow burner. Hopefully, I don't get stopped in the second half of the fight. But no, it's great. I mean, me and Carl get on. I got a lot of time for him. I got a lot of respect for him, which I disguised pretty well for years and years and years. And then once he realised, actually, no, you know, I appreciate you a little bit. He lowered the guard, and you know, and we get on really well now. He's someone who I could call for advice even. We're all right. So no, the shows have gone really well. Everyone's been happy as far as it feels. I think the next stop is Shrewsbury. Can't remember the last time I've been there. Maybe I never have, but that's exciting. We're up there next weekend. So yeah, long may it continue.
How did it come about? Like, how from kind of the last time we saw you in the ring together, don't want to dwell on that too much. How long since then did the thawing take between you for you to become kind of pally? How did it all start?
Yeah, no, I mean, like, people think, oh, yeah, after the fight, man, I hated him more after the second fight than I did before it. Before it, I thought nothing of him. And I'm sure he hated me just as much. Like, it wasn't that closure that he wanted and he can put me to bed. Like, the first interview he does the next day after the fight, he's still seething, you know. It took a long time to simmer, and I'm sure he come to terms with it quicker than I did. I probably couldn't forgive him until I won the belt myself, won a world title, where I could finally say, oh, well, it was all part of the journey, weren't it, you know? If I hadn't got there, I'd probably hate him right now, but yeah, and then we've met up a few times, been colleagues, covered boxing, you know, been at the shows, and yeah, the rivalry was just too much effort to keep going. We was nice to each other. We killed each other with kindness, and yeah, it's what I would prefer, to be honest, than trying to carry on hating someone. That takes a lot of energy, you know, especially when you get to my stage when I'm not fighting anymore. There's no need for it. So probably whenever it was, we had a I can't remember whose show it was, like who was headlining, but we both covered for Sky. Sky made a big thing of it. And I suppose there was a slight bit of awkwardness in the meeting, like the talent meeting. What do they call it? It's where, you know, you all come together before the show, and you make sure that everyone knows who's fighting. No one's been asleep at the wheel. You know what time you're on. So you just have a little meeting, and just, we got on from then. So it's all been good.
Do you think that you would have this relationship now if you'd have won the rematch? Do you think Carl would have given that to you if you'd have won the second fight?
Maybe because like he was at the end of his career. Like, he'd had a long, tough career, and this was his like this was his like he spoke about recently. This was his last sort of huge effort. Like, win, lose or draw, this was going to be his last fight. So I think he could have come to terms with it. Whether I could have stopped gloating would have been a tough one. Do you know what I mean? Whether I'd just but straight away, if I'd beaten Carl, like, there would have been gloating just for the fun of it. But then I could have lowered my guard and shown the respect that I had for him and everything else that comes with it. But so I think so. I think he. But who knows? A very good question. And I don't like to say very good question. You can say very good question after you've answered the question. Don't start an answer with very good question, because all that means is you don't know the answer to the question. You're like, oh, I need some time to think.
Well, I'll take your word for it as somebody who was very good with the media in your day. Would you think you would ever say, like 10, 15 years down the line, somebody gives you enough money to do a tour with, let's say, I don't know, James DeGale? Would you do that?
Yeah, sure. I mean,
I think that would be a slightly different vibe.
Yeah, slightly different vibe. You know, we never... We you know, me and Cole sort of made men's before this tour was put together. me and James haven't. And DeGale's, he still lives in London. We have mutual friends that cross over all the time. I don't know. I don't know if like Carl was good at giving it back. So the verbal build up was good. I think DeGale's a different person than when I fought him. Like he was very animated, very argumentative. Now he just seems much more chilled. I don't think it would carry on for a great story. But we might do one day. See if someone comes to us. So who's gonna broker that deal? Eh? Yeah, maybe one day we do one if we get a taste for it, then maybe. But right now, there's only one tour you want to go see, and that's me and FROCH, isn't it?
And how do we do that, George? So how does
go
one
online? Don't be that guy who asks me how to do it. Right? Use your initiative. How would you go about it, Rob? If you thought I want to go to this, I won't directly ask George. What I'll do is I'll try something on my own account, like my own accord first. What would you do?
I'd probably Google watch Carl Froch George Groves tour.
Yeah, and then you probably get hit with like the Macmaker Promotions website, which that would come up first, and you can get in contact with Dean, who works there direct, or just buy tickets direct from him. Either or. He's a lovely guy. He's working very hard. He always looks very stressed on show night. So yeah, and there's always tickets available. It's not, these are at the moment they're dinner shows. They can always squeeze another table in for you. If you really want to be there, they'll squeeze you in. So it's not like we're at the Hammersmith Apollo and there's only so many seats. Like no, they'll get you in. So yeah, everyone's welcome. Everyone's invited.
Look, I didn't intend to kind of to go too far into it, but I'm going to ask, I'm more intrigued than anything. Obviously, without over divulging, you want people to still come and see it. But what kind of format does it take? What's the standard evening so far been for the free shows?
Yeah, so we come out. Do
a little bit.
We'll say hello. There's no pushing and pulling. There's no. There's none of that malarkey. You have the compare at the moment. It's been Adam Leventhal, who's been fantastic. He knows the rivalry inside out. So we'll talk about what happened before the first fight. The first fight, there's usually a slight disagreement at the ending of the first fight, and then talk about the second fight, and then onwards, and then like all these events, there's there's some fun games. There'll be maybe an auction, this sort of thing, and then we do a Q&A at the end. So anyone who's come and's got some questions they want to ask, and we've had some fascinating questions. Yeah, I ain't going to give any away because everyone thinks they're the first one to think of those questions. So if you do end up at the show, by all means, ask a question, and we'll give you the honest answer. So it's funny because we are totally content with each other, but at the same time, there's certain things that I ain't going to let him have, get away with, and vice versa. So it does get a little bit heated, at certain points. So, but it's all good fun.
It must be great. Like I can imagine, like when you're in your career, you don't really think of it. Certainly when you're in a rivalry like that. But to be able to go and do a dinner show that people are going to turn up for. I mean, I was speaking to somebody today, and I said that you were coming on the podcast. I said, George Groves, really got me into around FROCH Groves, really got me into the sport, and now I was a hardcore boxing fan. It must be great to kind of have that in your like. Not going to name any names, but some fighters enjoy tremendous success while they're active, and then when they retire, boxing, the nature of sport, but certainly boxing, it's on to the next one, and they kind of get not pushed to a side in a bad way, but it's just the nature of the beast. Whereas we already spoke about the DeGale rivalry, almost said fights, but of course you only had one as pros. He won the amateur one as well before he butts in. But it must be great to have that rivalry that people will kind of look back on, and you have people who are still interested in your career after it's finished.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, like when I was been preparing for FROCH the first time, he kept talking about his legacy, and it was a word that I didn't like. Like I didn't like you talking about legacy. What's this got to do with anything? But I still hadn't won a world title yet. I thought I was going to go on and beat Carl and conquer the world. So legacy wasn't an important thing to me. It was something that sort of made me shudder a bit. But now, like, I can say that even though I lost at Wembley, like, I am proud that, I was involved in the biggest fight in post-war Britain at the time, and we created something out of nothing. I did the bulk of the heavy lifting, but I know that without Cole as a antagonist, without Eddie Hearn having the ambition to take himself to the next level, without the backing of Sky and being in a position where they could just promote and publicize the shit out of it, but it's amazing achievement. And as you say, people come up to me and say, they love the rivalry. They've got them back into boxing, or it made them follow boxing in the first place. And you get numb to people over the years, Rob. Like people as a whole, you don't think much of, because sometimes they're booing you on the way in and they're cheering you on the way out, and then so it's tough to contend with people. And I think you want to have a slight detachment of people collectively, because ultimately, as you say, boxing finishes, you can get forgotten about real quick. It's a whore's game. So, and doesn't matter at what level you get to, you're still a whore. Sad story, but we love it. Like, what can we do? It's individuals that pay dividend in the end, and it's them individuals that you end up fighting for and caring about. And then when you meet some real nice people, hardcore fans that have followed you and are happy for you, like it's really rewarding. So I've always got that in the back, feather in the cap, that we went to Wembley and we sold 80,000 tickets, and now that's Cole's catchphrase, like he can't get away from it, which I'm glad that he won't let no one forget either. So it's all good.